There's a new 2D application for the iPad. It's called Callipeg. It was released just a couple days ago. The interface is tricky, but we're going to take a look at it right after the intro. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is Carlos, and today, like I said, we're going to be taking a look at Callipeg. Callipeg is a 2D animation application for the iPad that's currently available in the Apple App Store. It started out as a successfully funded Kickstarter project, and now it's out in the wild. The cool thing about this application, one, it works on the iPad, and two, this application has been endorsed by a bunch of very important and talented 2D animators. People like Travis Blaze. He's known on YouTube and Instagram as Sketch to Animate. And you should check out his channel. I'll leave a link right there. So then that way you can take a look at his channel, and he's streaming every week and he's animated. Dude is outrageous. The fact that he was a part of this application in whatever way, shape, or form made me think that this thing was actually going to be a legit contender for the 2D animation on iPad crown. I know that you're able to do animation on Procreate. There's also Flip-a-Clip. There's Rough Animator. All of those are great. I'm going to leave a link up here for the video that I did on Flip-a-Clip. I'm planning another one for Rough Animator, but you know how we get around here when we get new toys. Callipeg, new toy. Yeah, it's time to get excited. Okay, and with that being said, let's go ahead and move over to the iPad. When you first open the application, you'll see that it's a very clean interface. It looks a lot like Procreate. We have these buttons on the top right. Import, if we tap that, we see that we can take a picture. We can go into the photo album or even access files in the Files app. Let's go ahead and tap New Shot. And here we're able to name it. Okay, I'm gonna hit return. And then we can do the width and height, which is fine. 1080p is fine, but I'm going to tap on frames per second, knock that down to 12. You have to remember when you're doing animation, especially 2D animation, the more frames that you're dealing with, the more drawings you have to make. A good solid number for 2D animation is 12 frames per second. You can go up to 24 or even 30 if you're bananas. This application can handle 12 frames, 24 frames, 25 frames, 30 frames, and 60 frames a second. So I'm going to hit create. Let's take a tour around the interface. Top left here, we have the gallery button. So if we tap that, we go back to the gallery. The settings button, which we can take a look at general settings. If you're left-handed or right-handed, start counting frames at 0 or 1. I'm not 100% sure why that makes a difference, but I'm sure it does to someone. But I'm going to leave mine at 0. Backup time interval, maximum number of backups kept. That could prove important if you're running a little bit short on hard drive space on your iPad. Okay, so let's move over to export. Type sequence. You can export an image. Which format do you want to export in? There we go. We'll leave it like that for now. Onion skinning, here you can type in the opacity percentages for however many frames you see before and after the current frame that you're drawing on. Your canvas, you can set the background color, the sheet color, and the sheets are basically the frames in which you're drawing in. So hang on one second. The cool thing that these guys did is they took a lot of the approaches from the OG animators, the guys that would sit there with a stack of papers, right? You start with one sheet, and that's similar to what they're doing here. One sheet is the one frame, and then if you add another sheet, right? And so at the end of your animation, you're just gonna have a stack of sheets. Callipeg takes these sheets and lines them up sideways like this. So you're drawing sideways instead of on top of each other. Granted, on top of each other here in this application, you have the different layers, and we'll get to that in a second. But I just wanted to explain to you guys, when you open up this application, it says sheets, that's what they're talking about. It's the different frames. Okay, and flip sensitivity. So this is another term that traditional 2D animators that draw on stacks of paper talk about, the flip. When they're talking about the flip, and just so you know, the shortcut, the gesture shortcut for flipping is 3 fingers up and down. If you're doing 3 fingers left and right and it doesn't do anything, just go up and down. It'll flip that way. But the flip comes from when you're making a sequence of art, right? What you're going to do is have probably 3 or 4 fingers with a piece of paper in between, or a sheet in between your fingers, and then you're going to be flipping like this. So that's what it means when Callipeg talks about flipping. They're talking about like actually flipping your page. So then you'll see here in a little bit, when you're drawing on the iPad, if you want to flip, you take 3 fingers, you go up and down, and you're flipping through the drawings. So you can adjust the sensitivity, you can invert the flip, and timeline. We have timeline metrics. We can either do frames or time. I'm going to leave it at frames because I'm a computer guy. Scrubbing disabled onion skin. So while you're scrubbing, if you have this turned off and you're scrubbing, you're going to be able to see the onion skinning sides of the previous frames and the upcoming frames. If you turn this on, which I'm going to, it will automatically turn off the onion skinning effect. So I'm able to see just a drawing. I don't feel like I necessarily need to see the frames that are about to happen or that have happened while I'm scrubbing. I'm just trying to get a good feel for the animation that's happening. Okay, so that's the timeline. All right, I feel good about that. You guys feel good about it? Ready to move on? Let's move on. Sometimes when you're drawing and you really need to get in there, you want to hide the timeline. But then if you're planning your animation, you'll want to go ahead and just turn that back on. So this little number here, it's a 12. If you tap here, this is where you can change the frame rate of your animation. 40 frames a second. Huh, it does 40 frames a second. But like I said before, that's a lot of drawing, so we're gonna go ahead and change that back to 12. Okay. Here we have the playback button. The shortcut for playing and pausing your animation is 4-finger tap. If we tap the brush, Callipeg comes with 11 brushes. And if you feel like you need more than that, you can swipe left and duplicate the brush that you swiped left on. Or you can click this plus button and then we tap on it, and now we can see that we can adjust the smoothing, spacing. And if we tap back, I'm able to slide to the left and hit delete. Over here on the left, the top circle, that gives us the ability to increase the size or decrease the size of the brush. Tap and hold that button, click left and right with your pencil. You see that you get immediate feedback of the size of the brush, exactly where your pencil is. And here we have the opacity. If we drag up and down, we can affect the opacity of the brush that we're using. And of course, we have our undo and redo buttons. Similarly to the brush, we have the eraser tool, and we're able to do all of the same functionality. But instead of adding pigment, what we're doing is we're taking it away, which leads us to the selection tool. If I click the selection tool, and over here on the left, there's a little circle with an arrow. That's just the move tool. So I'm able to move, I'm able to rotate, I'm able to resize. And if I resize and tap my finger, it constrains the adjustments that you're doing. Just to the right of that left side panel, we see here we have some arrows that we can tap. That will actually flip things horizontally. And this one will flip it vertically. Reapplied transformation values. And this is to reset the transformation. So if you do a bunch of different things to your artwork, you can hit this guy and it'll turn everything right back to before you started manipulating it. This X is going to X us out of the selection. However, I'm going to go back here, and if you tap this bottom button, you see that we can affect the quality of the strokes that we're putting down. We can go low quality, medium quality, high quality. So for now, I'm gonna go low quality. This will be helpful if you're doing your roughs. Your roughs don't need to be high quality roughs. You can turn your quality down to low, but then when you go to do your inks and your colors, you might want to then boost that back up to a high quality layer level. Hit that X. Under the circle with the arrow, we have the rectangle selection tool. And just to the right of that, we have a squiggly line, which lets us do a free-form selection. If I wanted to clear that selection, I just tap that icon again. And then if we go to the icon that's just under the freehand, we see that we get a rectangle. And now we can just click on the move tool and move things around. And we have the undo, redo buttons there. And that's the selection tool and the move tool. So next to the move tool and the selection tool is the eyedropper tool. If I tap that, tap and hold, wherever I move my pencil, that's the color that's going to get picked up. So now you see up here on the top right, my color changed to green, which then leads us to that icon. If I tap here, and we can use this color triangle to pick the colors that we want. If that's not your thing, if you're more of a mathematical person, you can click on the bottom side of this palette, and now we see the sliders. You can adjust the RGB values, the hue, saturation, and brightness. And you can even add a hexadecimal value. And the last icon at the bottom of this palette, being able to create your own color palettes is super helpful if you have a certain color scheme for different projects. For example, if I wanted to have a robots and aliens color palette, I can come in here, hit return. Choopy has a greenish color, so now that that's there, I can just tap this little circle here, boop, and we have the green color selected. If I wanted the dark green color, I can come down to my history, tap that, and click that little empty circle, and there's that. If I wanted to, let's just say I wanted to have black in that palette, and we might as well have white in there too. So that's super handy too. You can have a collection of colors. Depending on the project that you're working on, you can pull that palette up and you're off and running. So then once I have my palette done, what I can do is flip over to the triangle select color selector again, and you see that my palette is right there. Let's say that I have a circle and I wanted to fill that with color. First thing I need to do is make sure that that shape is closed, and then I'm gonna double tap, and that double tap will fill in that shape full of the color that I have active. Let's make our way down to the timeline. This first icon we see, it's a layers button with a plus on it. So obviously that means that we're gonna add a layer. So this little number right next to the new layer icon, that just shows us how many layers we have. The arrows right next to that number, we can use those arrows to pull the timeline up. And here we see that we have 2 layers. I can double tap and just name that roughs, hit enter, and we can name this, I don't know, cleanup. So the first icon that we see is 100%. So if we click and drag on that, it brings a percentage down, and if we drag to the right, it brings a percentage up. Why is that helpful? While you're doing your rough animations and then you do your cleanups and then you're starting to do your finalized ink drawings, you might want to bring the opacity for the roughs down, so then that way it doesn't confuse you when you're putting your ink lines down. This little icon here that looks like a flame is actually an onion. So you want to tap that to turn your onion skinning on. You tap it again to turn it off. So we see right next to the onion skinning icon, we have the magnet icon. For that icon to work, we need more sheets on the timeline. So we'll get to that one when we have more sheets. But for now, let's take a look at this little hamburger menu here. If I tap that, we see that we can delete this layer. So we might as well delete this layer, okay? If I click, I can lock this layer. So now I'm not able to do anything to it. I can't delete it, I can't do anything until I unlock. Okay, this next icon is select all sheets. So let's add some sheets to the timeline. There's a couple ways to do it. First, all I have to do is make sure that I have the brush tool selected and I have the tool that I want to draw with. And then I'm going to just draw a nice circle. I can then make sure that my onion skinning is turned on, go to the next frame, and then add a new drawing. And come down here, add another one. There we go. And now we can go to the top center of the application and hit the play button, and we have a bouncing ball. Shortcut for the playback is 4 fingers. If you tap, it plays. If you tap again, it stops. And again, we can flip through our animation using a 3-finger scrub. We can scrub up and down. And now that we have multiple sheets, now I can show you how to use the magnet tool. What I'm going to do is double tap on that sheet and move it off to the side. And something to keep in mind, you can resize the timesheet by pinching and spreading your fingers. Just make sure you're down at the bottom part. If you do it up here by the numbers, it's just going to scrub through the timeline. So make sure you're down at the sheets section of the timeline. Okay, so now that we purposely spread those drawings apart, what I'm going to do is tap the hamburger menu and go up to select all sheets. And now I'm going to tap the magnet tool. And you see how it just took everything and sucked everything up close? There's sometimes when you're trying to figure out an animation, sometimes you have a little bit extra framing in there that doesn't need to happen. Select those frames and hit that magnet tool. Sucks it all right in. It's like digital liposuction for 2D animators. Let's say that we wanted to adjust the timing of just one frame. What I'm going to do is come down here, double tap that one frame, and now I can click and drag. And now that sheet lasts for about 8 frames. And then if you click and drag the left side of that sheet, what's going to happen is it's going to bring those other sheets with it. Another way to group select just a certain group of sheets is to double tap and drag. So tap, tap, drag. This part took me a little while to get used to. So if you're going crazy trying to figure out how to do this, you have to remember tap, tap, drag. That second tap, leave your pencil down and then drag. I was tap dragging, double tap, and then dragging, all kinds of stuff. None of that works. What you have to do is tap, tap, drag, tap, tap, leave it down, and then drag. So let's see how that works. Tap, tap, drag, tap, tap, drag, tap, tap. And now I have that group selected, and now I can tap, hold, and then move those sheets over. And again, if I wanted to do just, say, these guys, tap, tap, drag, and now I can move these guys over. I can also group manipulate these frames, but we'll get to those icons in just a couple minutes. Okay, back to the hamburger menu. If I tap, there's a merge layers tool. Okay, so to do the merge layers, obviously we need more layers. So I'm gonna tap the add layer button a few times. But if you look, you can sit here and say merge layer, nothing is happening. What you need to do is swipe right, and you see how it turns blue? I'm gonna swipe right on the next layer. All the layers that you want to merge, swipe right. They turn blue. And now you're able to go to the hamburger menu, merge layers, and there you go. It took me a hot second to figure that one out. If I tap and drag a layer, I'm able to affect the positioning for those layers. So if I tap, hold, I'm going to scroll down, and now that layer is at the very bottom. Let's see what this does. Duplicate without drawings tool. So what that did is it took all of the sheets that we have on that layer, and it made a duplicate of that layer, of those sheets in that layer, but with no artwork in it. So then that way we have the perfect framing for whatever animations we want to put on top of what might be happening on this layer. Similarly, if we wanted to have an exact copy of those drawings in those sheets on that layer, what we do is click the hamburger menu, go up to duplicate with drawings, and now we have two of the same layers. And now that we have all of these layers stacked up, we can tap on there and we can show only this layer, or we can hide this layer. And now this layer here is the only one that's visible. So now we can go through here and check out our ball bouncing. So now that we took a look at all the functions that are available layer level, let's go in a little deeper and take a look at sheets level. First off, what I'm going to do to simplify is I'm just going to go ahead and merge layers. And I'm sitting on the first sheet. So what I'm going to do is double tap and then tap and move up. And now we see that we can adjust the timing. Drawing on ones, drawing on twos. That's basically the same thing as grabbing the right side of that sheet and dragging it over. Let's say you tapped a sheet and then you got into, say, the timing, but you didn't really want to do the timing. What you need to do is, without picking up your pencil, move outside the icon of the timing and then drag back in, and that'll back you out of that menu. For this next icon, what I'm going to do is tap, tap, move up and create a box and select these two frames. Now I can tap and move up and go to create in between structure. So that is a shortcut where Callipeg takes your art, separates it, takes a look at the timing for those two sheets, and creates in between sheets similar to the other two frames. Let's say you have two sheets that are not the same timing. Callipeg is going to take the longer timed sheet and create the new sheet off of the longer time. So to illustrate that point, I'm going to tap, tap, move up and over and select these frames here. I'm going to tap and move up, create in between structure. And you see how in between the longer sheet and the shorter sheet, Callipeg gave me a longer sheet. And in between the shorter sheets, Callipeg gave me the shorter timed sheet. And now let's say we have a sheet that's extremely long, but we need to chop it down. The shortcut for that is go to that sheet and just draw a line down, and you see how that gets split right there. I'm going to group select a bunch of these frames, so tap, tap, swipe up. If you're trying to group select these frames this way, you have to tap, tap, and kind of almost like swipe up. If you're just swiping straight to the right or straight to the left, you might get frustrated. So what you want to do is just kind of go at an angle, and I found that that is the sweet spot. That's how you get a consistent selection box. Tap, tap, and move at a diagonal. To show the next function, what I'm going to do is I'm going to label these. So now I'm going to come over here, select all my sheets. I'm going to click and move up, and I'm going to invert. So now we see my first frame has a number 9 on it, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Where again, if we undo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so for the next one, I'm going to double tap, make sure that it's green. I'm going to go up and copy contents. Then I'm going to create a new frame. And do paste content. I could also come over here, double tap to create a new sheet. Double tap again to turn it green. And then move up and say paste content. And it would help if I turn the visibility on. 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. That's pretty cool. I've been trying to figure out how to do this duplicate actions thing, but quite honestly, I've created new layers, I've created new sheets, and I'm not 100% sure what happens there. So we're just going to move on to the next thing, which would be import. So if I had a new sheet, what I'm going to do is double tap and then move up to import. And then that's where you can take a photo, import something from your library, whatever. This is a good time to go over some of the gestures that you can use while using this app. If I draw a line that I don't want, 2 fingers, undo, 3 fingers, redo. If I do 2 fingers tap and hold, I get this floating menu. Shortcut for brush, you're able to cycle through your drawings. You can copy, you can move over somewhere else and hit paste. Click that little X to make it go away. 3 finger tap and drag, you can cycle through your drawings. So up makes it go forward and down makes it go backwards. 4 finger tap initiates the playback, and while it's playing, 4 finger tap pauses. Okay, and that's our first look at Callipeg, the new 2D animation application for the iPad. I hope watching this video saves you a little time and actual nail biting, because it took me a hot second to figure out things like that group selection, the tap drag thing for selecting just a group of sheets. There's a lot of really important tools that are in this app, like the magnet tool. That is a time saver, but the thing is you have to figure out how to use it. So after almost throwing this thing across the room, I figured out the magnet tool. Personally, I think Callipeg has great potential. I'm going to be using this app for some of the videos that I'm making, and so as I go through, I'll share with you guys some of the videos and some of the feedback that I have about the app. Callipeg is officially available in the Apple App Store. The pricing is 99 cents a month, $10 a year, or $50 until they decide to charge you more, I guess. I hope you found this video helpful, and hopefully it doesn't make you want to pull your hair out of your head, because I'm telling you, there's a couple things in there that's a little difficult to figure out, but once we figured it out, we're here. We're ready to animate. If you liked this video and you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up. If you know anyone that's interested in 2D animation on the iPad, Callipeg, any of this stuff, please send this video on over their way. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I'm coming out with content, rapid pace. If you click that little bell right next to the subscribe button, every time I come out with something, you'll be alerted, and that way you can come and participate in this wonderful, we'll call it chasing art. All right, guys, that's it for me. I gotta go edit this video. It's a long one. All right, take care.